So what I did was I said, okay, I wrote the story, and in the story, we're at one of the scenes in the story. We're at the main character's house, and the main character is here, and then we're at the friends, the sidekick's house, which is here, and I have no idea who lives in the other houses, but wanting them to look like they live in a neighborhood, I didn't want to just have like nothing on the other side of the fence, right? The other thing is I know that I have a scene in the backyard, specifically in the backyard of the main character's house and the friend's house. Okay.
Right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all illustrated for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we published somewhere around 70 books, and we've all taught illustration at university art schools.
Each week, we answer awesome questions from our trusty listeners like you about the field of illustration. Sometimes we argue, sometimes we agree, but most of the time, you're going to learn something brand spanking new.
I'm going to disagree with something. Are they trusty? I don't like that word, trusty listener, because it makes me think of like Hi-Ho Silver, like my horse. I'm Lone Ranger.
Trusty
I'm
horse.
the Lone Ranger.
Are you equating our listener to a horse?
Or I got a trusty, dog sidekick.
No, they're trusty because they typically our audience is with us. They've been with us from the beginning. They're trusty. They listen to our episodes.
Okay.
They're trusty. I trust my audience. Unlike Jake, if you guys don't like the word be trusted in, email Jake. Just let him know how you feel about how he feels like you're shady.
Okay, so it's Jake at MrJakeParker.com. Let me know. This is my inbox. I hope it doesn't explode. Let me know if you prefer the word trusty listener or if there's a better adjective to describe.
What adjective would you use?
How about listeners?
Just
you
listeners.
Got to give them an adjective. That's like so generic.
I would say,
like, yeah, you're listening.
Beautiful listeners.
That's funny. I was going to say the
judgmental.
same thing.
I don't like it.
Beautiful.
I don't like
Everybody's
it.
beautiful in their own way, Lee. Lee thinks you guys are ugly.
Children are the future.
Okay, please.
Treat them well and let them lead the way.
We got it. I have a question. Anything to get you to stop singing. Okay. Here we go. This comes from Jamie.
Trusty listener.
Beautiful listener. Beautiful Jamie. This is the title, What if Freelance Isn't For Me? How does the process of obtaining a studio full-time position differ from freelance? So this one really piqued my interest. I'll elaborate on the question first. Jamie says, then provide details seconds for convenient. I don't know if we need to get into the details, but here's the elaboration. Some listeners, myself included, may be listening and hearing a lot of the advice more guided towards obtaining work as a freelancer. And it's true. We do talk a lot about the freelance life, the gig life as an illustrator. What if we know that path isn't for us for whatever reason? Maybe we aren't business minded, don't enjoy the worry and the stress associated with finding work, whatever it is. We just know and feel more comfortable in a studio setting. How does the process of transitioning from beginner to preparing a portfolio for your first job differ from obtaining work freelance? Okay, so I appreciate this question because I worked in different studios for 12 years. My career, my first big boy job was for an animation studio in Fox Animation. And what is great... So the question I think specifically is how do you obtain a studio position? How does that differ from obtaining freelance work? So the freelance job, the freelance work, it makes sense to cast a wide net with who you're contacting, who you're offering services for. It makes sense to have a strong social media presence, a very tailored portfolio website. All of this is to attract attention for the work that you're doing because you're trying to get as many jobs, as many individual jobs as you can. You want art directors to see it. You want editors to see it. You want directors to see it. Like you want maybe people lower level assistants to these people to see it, so they could say, "Oh, I found a guy. I found someone who can do this stuff." When you're, and you guys could disagree with this or not, but when you are going for a studio job, you have to dial it in and essentially design your portfolio for that specific job. So let's say you want to work in the art department at Pixar, DreamWorks, Sony, Paramount. It's not Paramount. It's who are the guys? What are they called that make the midgets, the minions, the midgets, the minions.
Can't say
Pixar,
that anymore.
DreamWorks,
It's Universal, right? What is it?
Universal Studios?
Illumination. It's Illumination Entertainment.
Oh, I don't know.
And then you have Disney as well, right? So those are like the 5 main feature animation studios, and then you've got like the TV studios that do it as well. So all of these studios have a house style that they kind of do. Like you could tell a Pixar film, and you could look at the art of Pixar movies, and those look different than a Disney movie, and those look different than a DreamWorks movie, right? You're really wondering what the house style is. Go look at those art of books and see what the artists are doing in there. Okay. And then what you do is you make a portfolio specifically for that job. So they have a position open for environment designer. You make a portfolio full of environments. They have a position open for character designer. You make a portfolio full of characters, right? Be as specific as you can. And I think that's the main difference. Now you're specifically asking about beginning, right out of college, or just dipping your toe into this. Chances are your stuff isn't good enough to get a job at one of these places, because if you think about it, these art departments have 30, maybe 40 people max in the art department and doing the concept art and stuff, and there's 5 of these studios, so we're looking at 240 jobs, and the availability is maybe 1 position to 5 positions open a year. So there's a lot of competition for that kind of thing. Your best bet too is making friends in the industry, getting to know people, so that when a job opens up, they're like, "Oh, I know this person. I know Jamie. They'd be great for this. Let's hire them." So it's a much different thing. And sometimes getting a job at one of these studios is akin to like getting in the NBA, right? It's that type of thing. So you have to be specific. You have to be dialed in. If you're a beginner, though, there's hundreds of smaller, tiny studios that do this kind of stuff. Not feature animation, but that need concept artists. So there's people who work for like production companies that will outsource that bigger companies outsource work to. There's companies who design apps, all different kinds of apps. There's 100 different companies that do like apps that need art departments, and they're hiring more frequently, more often, and you can get a job at one of those things, build up your portfolio, build up your work experience, do it for 2 or 3 years, and then transition into one of these bigger studios. I worked for Blue Sky Studios. I couldn't get that job as a 20 in my early 20s. I wasn't experienced enough. It wasn't until I was 28 that I had a portfolio that I could kind of trick them into hiring me. Like it was just good enough to get the job. So that's sort of my experience. I know, Lee, you worked in a couple of studios early on. I don't know if that tracks with what I was saying there.
No, it definitely does. It's right on the nose there. I mean, it's low availability. People that already work at the studios are so dependable. I mean, you got to think, why would a company want to hire someone unless they're expanding or working on a new product line where they literally just don't have enough artists to produce it? It's easier for them to give a project to somebody that they already know on staff. And so there's just not enough, there's too many mice and not enough cheese, as an analogy. But the other thing is, asking specifically, why is it so hard? So there's job availability, of course, but then there is the difficulty of the position itself. And so if you look at, go buy like 5 art of books from one studio from different movies, even within like Disney or something like that, or all of them, they all have a different style. And so you not only have to be able to draw huge environments, cities and all these different perspectives, but you also have to do it in a style that might be super flat on one movie and it might be super realistic on another movie. And everybody just doesn't have that skill set. Within illustration, it's so easy. Like if I want, like take my style, for example, I can do greeting cards or I can do magazine illustrations, whatever, but I don't have to actually change how I'm making the work. But as a concept artist, you do, and it gets really tricky there. I just don't know how many people have the skill set to make that jump.
Mm-hmm. Another thing too is, you're 20% of the job of concept art, being in these art departments, is doing the stuff that ends up in the art of book. The other 80% is, hey, we've got this shot. The character's going to be walking past a row of buildings, and we need to know what is going to be like taped on the windows of the buildings. And so your job for that week is figuring out what's going to be these little sheets of paper and stuff that go on the windows, right? It can get that specific and that dialed in, right? So and then other times it might be like I know on the Ice Age movies, there were 1,000 shots of the characters in an environment where it's rocks and trees and like branches. And so the way the studio worked is they have a bunch of tree assets and a bunch of rock assets. And you, the artist, would actually go into Maya 3D program and kind of put stuff in place, and then take that into Photoshop and draw over it like specifics, like we need the ground level to kind of go like this, but here's the tree that we've already built that needs to go right there,
Right.
So
it's pure production
work. It's just trying to get the job done. So there's the glamour side of it, but then there's like the work side of it, and so just know that going into it, that's what the job entails. And like I said, it's a much smaller pool. And when you work freelance illustration, there's a much, much bigger pool, a lot more artists, but a lot more jobs as well.
I have a little story to go with just the level of that you have to be at. Everybody wants the character design position that's what I always see for being a concept artist. So my friend Robert Kondo, he graduated one term before me, was one of those lucky people that got literally plucked out of college and full-time Pixar artist. Yeah. And he had been there. So he's amazing. And he still is amazing. But he was that good out of school too. So he's really good. But he was talking about a time where he was in layout as a concept artist, and that was what he was good at, and that's what he's got paid to do. And there was a time where a position came open to do characters, and he applied for it, and he said he just got crushed. He was not at the level that they needed. And this guy was already working at Pixar and was incredible. And he said that he just wasn't even in the running. It wasn't his forte. So just to show you kind of where that bar is.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I had a
do you have anything?
friend. Yeah, I actually have something to offer you guys.
All right. Yeah.
I can offer things. No, I had a friend who worked at Pixar, and she took leave to maternity leave. I think that's when you have a baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Anyway, being gone, I mean, she was told that, her job was waiting for her whenever she was ready. But she took a little bit longer than, for personal reasons in coming back. And when she finally came back, she said everything was different. And she didn't like the way they were doing things had all changed. And she didn't do anything except texture paint. And that's the only thing she knew how to do. And so when she got back, she just felt like it had passed her by, and she decided to voluntarily leave. She was like, she wasn't interested in moving forward. and that I don't know if that completely worked for her. It's hard to ask someone really detailed questions like, well, how do you feel? Do you feel like, you know what I mean? Like it was a sensitive territory, so I didn't really press a whole lot. But I think that for me, the takeaway there is, and this is something that you've talked about, Jake, is working at Blue Sky, is you can never learn enough, right? I mean, like you different skills. So once you're in the door, even, you need to be focusing and trying to find out how to do other parts of the production so that you can be plugged in more than one place. I mean, I don't know if they changed the software that she was using, but whatever it was, when she came back, she was like, everything was different enough that she was lost,
And
And
there's a lot of times where you're like, you just have to kind of roll with the punches, and things will change, and you gotta keep an edge. You just have to it's not like you're there and everything's cool and you're safe and you got a job. Like, you could easily watch someone come in after you, do really well, excel at it, and go on to be, lead character design or lead environment on the next product, project. So,
yeah. So let me add one more thing to this question, because, this may not be for Jamie, but in the letter it says, maybe we aren't business minded, don't enjoy the worry and stress associated with finding work, whatever it is. And I just want to say that, no one has gone into art because they want to prospect, because they want to find work, right? That's nobody. That's the worst part of being a freelancer. But I will say this, that for young artists, especially, kind of the dream, I think, for most of us is we want to be able to make what we want to make, and we want to get paid for it. As simply as that, right? I mean, we just want to draw the things we want to draw and paint the things we want to paint, and then be able to support ourselves and maybe a family with that work. And there's lots of different ways we can do that. But one of the benefits of freelance is, a lot of times when you're a new artist, you don't really know what you want to draw, and you don't really know what you want to say. So going into gallery work for some people is not really an option, because they don't really have anything to say. And so one of the benefits is, because you're given assignments and told what to draw, and you have to solve problems, you end up drawing things that you would have never drawn without that freelance work. And it really can help you hone your craft over time and really decide what it is that you want to do. And I've known a lot of illustrators over the years that have gone into either freelance or even working on game design or animation, or children's books, or whatever it is that they've gone into, based on figuring out a lot of what they like to do in freelance jobs that they hated. Quite simply put,
It's true.
Yeah.
And you also will learn to appreciate it when you get into the area that you really want to be in. I started in editorial illustration, and realized after about 3 years to 4 years that it stressed me out to have to come up with concepts that often got rejected, or often I'd pitch it to an editor and they would be like, yeah, you know what, we'll think about it and come up with an idea for you. And then they'd come up with an idea that I hated, and I'm like, I let them down because I didn't come up with a good idea, and then they had to come up with a lame idea too. And so it wasn't for me.
You have to draw their lame idea, like the tooth I had to draw riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. But then I found myself all of a sudden in my spare time working on narrative illustration, and realizing, oh, I want to be in children's books. It just became a thing that sprung forth out of the freelance work. So
yeah, there's two sides to the artist coin, and that's the one side is making, the other side is marketing.
Yeah,
and you got to do both. And I learned that lesson recently where since November, I've kind of taken a break from social media, like drastically dropped how many times the frequency of posting, sometimes weeks going by without posting, unfollowing everybody on Instagram, and just focused on making. And when I came back, like now I'm like, gotta market some stuff and sell some stuff and share some stuff. And the whole Instagram algorithm changed while I was gone. Like, you can't post in your timeline and expect people to see it. You got to do reels. You got to do live streams and stuff like that. And so it's just, as a freelancer, you just have to know that that's what you're getting into is you're going to spend some of your time marketing and some of your time making. Working at a studio, you're going to come in there and think, okay, I don't have to worry about marketing anymore. And that's true, but there's other dynamics and other games that you gotta play. And that's, and this might, like Jamie said in the email, like this might play to your strengths better, showing up on time, clocking in and clocking out, and being very present at the job when you're there, and doing the meetings, and making friends in the studio, and learning like how the studio politics works and all that stuff. Like that's another part of it. It's not just showing up and doing the job. There's all that other stuff too, because the culture there might grind against what you're used to as well. There's some studios have very aggressive culture, and some studios have very like laid back culture too. So there's just all these kind of things you got to worry about and deal with outside of the actual making.
I had one more thing. Let me ask you a question. Do you guys think that, in the past, like the job that you had, Jake, at Blue Sky and all, staff position with the benefits and all that stuff, my take on that is that whole thing is going away anyway. Like you can't be a staff person except for the very, very, very lucky few. I think the staff position is going away because the company doesn't pay for a company to hire a full-time employee. They're stuck with that employee. They have to pay all this in taxes and benefits and all that stuff. Whereas if they had just hire you as a contractor on one movie or a game or something like that, they can then hire a custom new group next time if it's a different style or whatever. Yeah. So I just don't think the full-time positions are around anymore as much.
I think in feature, I don't think that rings true for feature. I think for television, it's going to be a little bit different. Actually, tomorrow we are interviewing, and maybe by the time this podcast comes out, you guys have already heard this interview, but we're talking to Steven Silver, who's way into that world. He's a character designer. He's, he did all the stuff for Kim Possible. And so
let's ask him some of that stuff. Yeah, that's great.
Definitely want to like see the state of the industry. Right. So, okay. Should we move on to this next question?
Let's do it.
All right. This comes in from Amber. She says, I'm at the edge of my wits. Okay. I love SVS, all of it. Thank you so much for everything you do. The podcast is my favorite of all. So thank you very much for that. On the podcast, you've all mentioned edges a number of times and how important they are. I tried to understand, but it wasn't clear about exactly what you meant. I'm now going through painting texture and details, our course that we have. I believe is that in the foundations, or is that in the just in the like overall pool?
Which one was it?
Painting texture and details.
Yeah, I think that's just in the general elective kind of pool.
And I'm clearer now on edges, but I still am unsure how you make sure your edges are finished should not make things look too stiff and stilted. Like with Lee's style, for example, it's wonderfully free. And he said a few times how he goes back to mess things up. But let's get to I bet you all think Lee's edges are great. I certainly do, but please, could you try to help me understand how both these things are possible at the same time? How can I know if I'm making my edges good and presenting myself as professionally as possible, you still have movement and texture? So this is an example. We rarely take questions like this, but this is an example of...
Because we have to put into words what would be so easy to show visual.
What would be yeah, but this holds true to our opening statement, which is the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. So let's talk about how to do it.
Okay.
That's a tricky one.
Let me take a shot first.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it. Because I don't know what I'm going to say anyway.
So edges are basically plane changes in your illustration, and those planes could be. Let's take an example of like a building or a structure, where you have a corner of a building. You can walk around that corner. It makes a line that goes vertical in your composition, or mostly vertical, and based on the style that you're going for, like Lee does have a more organic, what would you say, like haphazard, anything goes kind of ruffian. I'm trying to be derogatory, and he's like, yeah.
No, that's right. Those are totally right.
A kindergarten with the crayon
kind of pedestrian.
Style. That's a little too sophisticated.
So he's got this garbage style, but in that style, he has to show edges. He has to show plane changes from time to time. So for his style, he has to stay true to the texture, but he also can't. What we're trying to talk about with edges is not making imperfections because you didn't care and because you didn't take the time to go back and fix them. It's because if you have imperfections, it's because you wanted them. And there's a big difference between intentionally having textural imperfections versus having sloppy work or mistakes. I quit too soon. I didn't do, like, it's funny because when I was teaching at UVU, I would give my students an assignment. I would say, I want you guys to spend an hour on this painting. Okay. And I want you to make it, and I'd put it like a still life or something for them to work on. Mm-hmm. And I would tell them, I said, I could spend, if given the time, 15, 20, even 30 hours on this painting. I really could take the time to make this, perfect. Mm-hmm. And it would take that long. I want you to do as good as you can in an hour. Mm-hmm. And you won't be able to get to that same level. And I would show them examples of that level, right? And then I'd always have students that would be done in 20 minutes. They're like, I don't know what else to do, And I'm like, okay, let me work on your painting a little bit, because the showing is sometimes the best way. And they would, I would say, well, see how you painted this line right here, and for whatever reason, it's hard to talk about the mechanics of the paint that they applied, but maybe they applied it vertically when they could have come across the plane with hash marks or with paint strokes that are perpendicular to the line or the plane change. And I'm like, and I would just start working on their painting and spend, 15, 20 minutes, the same amount of time that they had already spent. And they're like, wow, it's better. Those same people would have the same problem the next time. And what I chalked it up to is they didn't enjoy the process. They weren't enjoying painting. Mm-hmm. So they were just trying to get done with it as fast as they could, and they didn't care. So there's a certain amount of, now I might have to make an admission here too, in that when I first started in school, I was that person. I was like done in like half an hour, couldn't see spending any more time. And my teachers would like point out all these problems with my painting, and I'd be like, and I do the same thing next time. My process went from only being able to work an hour or two on a painting to being able to work. I think the longest I ever worked on one painting was like 100 hours or so, and that didn't happen overnight. What happens is you have to get to a point where your current level of finish isn't good enough for you. And when you do, you level up, because then you work harder on it and you stay with it longer and you fix your edges. That's what I got.
It's pretty good. I'll add to that as best I can. The big thing to me with edges is being intentional. And most of the time when we're critiquing edges that aren't working, it's not intentional. It's almost by default. It's when somebody doesn't know which brush to use, so they default to like a generic Photoshop brush, set typically too soft, and they're a little bit scared to kind of commit to an edge. And so it's overall just kind of murky. It doesn't look intentional. And that's the one thing, like I mentioned, like 3 artists, for example, like what Will was talking about a second ago, my work is pretty organic and textured. That's sort of my style. You got somebody else who's textured, but more broken, like say Marco Bucci, who did some classes for us, very different kind of look than mine. And then say the animation Carmen Sandiego, which is super graphic, super clean, right? Each one of those styles is going to call for a different edge control. And you have to just pick which one. And so part of it is like, okay, what style am I trying to get, and how are other people who already have this style, how are they treating the edge? But sometimes, I mean, the thing is, it's not a one size fits all for an image. It's some areas need to be tight. And typically for me, that's going to be in the focal point. I got pretty crisp edges there. As you get away from my focal point, that's when you can really start to unload on textures and whatever, because you're just kind of hinting at what that stuff is. So it's a placement thing. Where do the tight edges go, and where do the loose edges go, and lost edges too, which is a big thing in watercolor. And so part of that comes from experience, but the common denominator for all of these things is being intentional about what you're doing, and which means study and trial and error.
You'll also see with a lot of beginning painters that their edges are crisp in the background and blurry in the foreground, and that's a key indicator to a teacher who's critiquing that you don't have edge control. Because if you understand, and a lot of times those edges in the background are crisp because they used a brush that they shouldn't have used. Like I'm talking specifically digital brushes, but yeah, like painting a blurry edge is actually really difficult
To do it well, yeah.
To do it well, to make it straight and to make it right for that particular edge. And you're right, like you've got to have edges that are crisp in foreground areas and focal point areas, and edges that are blurry in backgrounds and places that you don't want to get attention, because crisp edges, it will get more attention. It is one of the things that will generate a focal point. So yeah.
The majority of people, though, when they're struggling with edges, in my opinion, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, do lean towards having too soft of edges. So if you're a beginner and you're right and you don't know what to do with your edges yet, you're like, I don't have enough experience to even start with what you're talking about, I would lean towards being crisp, towards the edges being harder, because the default is too soft, and that never works. It always looks mushy.
Yeah. All right. Next question. This comes from Sergio, titled Fork in the Road. Hi, my name is Sergio. I'm a teacher and an illustrator from Costa Rica. I love the podcast, and I really want to thank you because, now listen to this, you've helped me enormously to become a better professional. I have tripled my earnings since I started listening and have a much deeper understanding of contracts and royalties now. So how about that for a podcast?
Wait, shouldn't you be giving us a percentage of that?
Listen to us and triple your earnings. Your investment into us, we promise you triple returns on that.
Jake Parker at, what was your email address again?
Well, you listen to one of our episodes. Answer one question and it'll benefit you. No. Okay, so his problem is very common, he says, especially in amateurs. I don't consider myself an amateur, but it's okay if you want to burst my bubble. He says, I want to do too many things, different styles, different techniques, etc. And it's a little embarrassing to admit because I know what the answer is, and that's choose one thing and do it until you level up and become a pro. But although I know the answer, I've carried this issue for years. So anyways, it would be awesome if you guys could look at my stuff and tell me what sucks and what sucks more to help me make a decision, or maybe be controversial and say that it's okay to do lots of stuff. I don't know. So you want to look at his stuff And
Are we
looking
posting
at
his
it.
stuff? Can we talk about who this
we
is?
can talk about it.
Okay, so can I dive in real quick?
Dive in.
He nailed it, in the description. The work is solid on each piece. It is all over the place. I may not have ever seen a portfolio of only 12 images that look so
this
different.
diverse, yeah.
It looks like 12 different people, honestly.
Yeah.
And in when you're in the beginning of your career, this is what you should be doing, because you're experimenting. You're gonna find yourself by doing this. Too many people limit themselves early on and don't get enough chance to explore and find what they really love. So this is really good for that reason.
Yeah, it's and the other benefit of this is you start to get feedback. I mean, with 12 images like this, if you have these for print, or if people are liking or unliking and emailing you about them, which one is getting the most attention, and then balance that out with which one did you like making the most. I guarantee you, there's a figure drawing in the upper left, and then there's this really cool, like, painterly kind of painting in the lower right,
his Behance.
Third one down on the right. Those you did not get the same amount of enjoyment on each one of those. I'm not saying which one you enjoyed more, but they are so different. And so, like, how did they feel when you made them? And then what's the reaction from both of them? I happen to love that one on the lower, that third one down on the right. It's amazing, but that fits more what I'm interested in.
The
Maybe
figure
not what you. Yeah.
with the pink and purple hair.
No. The one under the gold one with the kind of walking kind of glowing figure. Gorgeous. And the figure drawing too in the upper left is competent, but it's boring.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a tough question, because I'm going to say you need to go and do more of the linear stuff, because that's what I like. And Lee's like, you need to do more of the walking woman, because that's what you like.
I said I like it, but I said which one is getting the reaction, and then which one did he enjoy doing? So there should be, what's the Venn diagram overlap there?
Yeah, if you go after what's making the money, that's not necessarily what you want to do. That's what happened to me. What I was talking about just a little earlier. I saw success in the editorial market, and I was making good money. So making good money, and I mean, I was making enough to easily support our family, and we were able to go on some vacations and stuff as a young family, which was beyond my wildest dreams. But the novelty of making money with my art wore off. You know what I mean? And when it did, all of a sudden, I'm like, it became like I was forcing myself to do my work, and I'm like, what is wrong? Like this was so fun a little while ago, and now you get used to making a certain amount of money, and then it's all of a sudden that wasn't it anymore. And that in order to be fed creatively, I was making paintings on my own, and my wife is like, "Oh, what's that for?" I'm like, "Oh, I just felt like doing it," and she's like, "Oh, you're not getting. That's just." Interesting, you're not getting paid for that. And yeah, so I don't know
would you
any
be working on something that you couldn't get paid for,
right? But I don't know any really successful artists that don't find themselves working on the things that they really love. Although if you're doing it for the money, eventually you just burn out. I don't know. Do you guys know anybody like that who's just picked something because they were making a lot of money, but they hated it?
I mean, after talking to Cam Kendall, he's like, I could quit doing art tomorrow and be just fine. I don't know if I believe him though.
I don't know.
What do you mean? He said he could quit, like, and you're saying quit professionally or just quit altogether?
From our interview with them, he was like, art isn't everything for me. I've got a bunch of different interests, but this is the one that I can actually make money from. But looking at his art, I'm like, he's having way too much fun.
He's having way too much fun. He's not phoning it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're calling him out on that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree, Lee. He should definitely pay attention to the ones that are making money. but also hopefully that's crossing over with the ones that he's having the most fun.
Right. Yeah. You have to have both. You can't go too long with only one of those.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that the old saying, like follow the opportunity and bring your passion with you.
Right.
I think it applies here, because it might be that, you know, it turns out that labels for fruit company packaging type of stuff, because he's done a little bit of that too, ends up being like there's as much work there as you could possibly want. And if you find a way to enjoy that, like each new product that you're designing packaging for is a new problem to be solved, and you just like holding those things in your hands once they're finished, you know, I could see that being the thing for you, right? So we can't answer it for you. You just you really gotta try something.
There is a warning that goes with that, though.
Do it.
And I'm going to add this warning to the previous question too, about being a full-time employee. The work that you do changes you over time. And sometimes it's hard to, if say something does hit for money and you're like, okay, I'm going to do that for a while and use it for income. You do that, and pretty soon your aesthetic changes, your art, everything about making images changes. And when you go towards money, sometimes it's hard to come back and find your voice. And so I'm just thinking about it, because like if this person said, if packaging hit and they were like, oh my God, I quadrupled my money again, my yearly income again by doing these packaging. Well, you do enough packaging and you're not fulfilling what you really want to do, your style will change because you're doing that packaging. It's not like you can turn it off. And that's been a big problem with some of my friends that are in studios, when they do say, you know what, I'm going to start doing illustration. And all of a sudden it looks like their illustrations are from a Disney movie. And they can't change it enough. You don't understand how hard that is to change. You can't just turn it off. So whichever route you pick, it's going to influence the work, even on the side too, and just the way you think and the way you build images. So
That's a good point.
Something to think about.
You know, another thing looking at this portfolio is, if I were an art director rolling up on this, I would be very hesitant to hire this person, because I don't know what style I'm going to get exactly. I don't know. Do you guys?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I mean, obviously he's saying that he's doing really well. He's tripled his money, but I think in general, one or two styles is probably best. And there's probably 7 styles here.
Yeah. Like that piece of advice will triple your money again. If you zero in on 1 or 2 styles and you have 12 pieces that all feel like they're from the same artist, then you're going to find the people that want that specific thing, or the people who want that specific thing are going to I'm a kindergartner. People who want that specific thing they're gonna reach out to you, and you could charge more because they know that they're getting the real deal. So, all right, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, those were good. Those were good questions.
Yeah, really good.
Really good ones.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. And your hosts today have been Will Terry, Lee White, Jake Parker. You can go over to willterry.com to check out Will Terry's portfolio. You can go over to leewhiteillustration.com, check out Lee's portfolio. You can go over to jakeparkerart.com to check out my portfolio. Podcast produced by Daniel 2. His website is daniel2.co, and 2 is spelled T-U. Special thanks to Master Production, David Bro, Keeper of the Curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, Chief Operations Officer, Lisa Fott, and a thank you to Lily Howell for our show notes. Now, go draw something.
Did you guys see the Elton John documentary? Or not documentary, the movie that they made about him?
Oh yeah, that was great. The
biopic.
That was so well done.
Yeah. Pretty good.
So well done. The way he was talking to his inner child.
Did it make you want to play piano or listen to his music?
It was masterfully done.
Like
No,
not touching
neither.
it. Or wear a feather boa.
I didn't want to play piano. I didn't want to listen to his music, but it was a good movie.
I love his music. I used to. I mean, that was one of my playlists. But the movie was. You know, it's funny because so many of them just do like their story, but this wove in his younger child. You know, like where he got to talk to his younger self.
Right.
You know.
Well, every one of these has the same story. We've already done this bit.
Right. The whole bit. But there's one thing that we didn't add to the bit. I do like holding this switch here.
Your wand.
There's one thing about this one, and that is realizing your limitations. Like, I did not know. That was my big takeaway, is that he did not write all those songs, and he had somebody who was better than him at writing, and he's like, "Yep, that's my writer," and he didn't try to he just sang.
Yeah.
He knew that's where his skill set was, but he needed this other person, and I had no idea about that. But how many other people would have had the humility to say, yeah, this guy's going to is better than me at making these songs or making these lyrics, and I'll just craft the song. It's just kind of cool. Like, not a lot of people do that.
That's what I realized when I hired that colorist for the comic. Like, he did it better and faster than what I would have done.
Right. And then it lets you move on and do other stuff too. So it's a double win, really.
Right. It makes me think I should outsource every part of comic making to different people. So
including
hire a writer,
the concept,
hire
and the
an
drawing.
artist.
Hey,
That's
let me ask
essentially a producer. That's all they do. Okay. One last question, Lee. We're on the basketball court, and I got a $100 bill.
Okay.
Lee, I will give you this $100 bill right now. No questions asked.
I like it.
I also have a briefcase with $10,000 in it.
Okay.
I will give you this $10,000 if you make a half-court shot with the basketball.
But you can walk away for 100.
And if you miss, you don't get anything.
Right.
What do you pick?
Oh, I picked the briefcase. I hit that stuff all day. That's my whole life is built on that.
I would take the briefcase, and here's why: you didn't offer enough incentive on the 100. You got to offer like $2,000,
$2,000
or 1,000 for me to take the money and walk away.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I messed up on the threshold there. So 2,000,
I take the 2,000.
Yeah, I would too.
1,000.
I'd throw the basket. I'd shoot the basket.
For 1,000, that's right at the threshold. I'd have to think about it. I'd have to make a little list.
500,
So,
you're
a
shooting,
metric.
right?
500.
Lee,
500,
you're
I'm shooting all day long.
Imagine it though. You got to think it through. We're there. Here's 500 crisp dollar bills. And you know you're going to miss. I mean, chances are you're going to miss, even though you're going to hit the rim.
Right. 99 out of 100, 99% chance miss.
I think you're long, and it comes right back to you.
No. I make
It's
that
going to
shot.
hit the back of that rim. and
I've
it's
built my
gonna-
whole life on
it's
that
the
shot.
biggest brick.
I'll tell you this.
Does it? Okay, go for it.
I was at a party, and it was a wedding, and everybody's drunk. This is great for extras on the podcast. Everybody's wasted, of course, because it's a party, and this huge group of people is playing poker, and everybody's around, like just tons of people around, and I'm, of course, my stupid, what would you call it? Aggressive, I guess, self. Like, I just like to talk crap a lot and mess with people.
Right.
So I come to this poker table. I'm not playing poker, but I come to the poker table. Yeah, super loudmouth. Come to the poker table, disrupt the whole game. I pull out a chip, and I'm like, I will bet anybody here that I can flip this chip up, and the little chip holders?
Yeah.
I said, I'll get it to land in the holder.
One of the slots.
One of the slots. And everybody's like, bullshit. And I'm in waste. There's no intent on hitting the slot. And everybody's like weighing on it, like, no, you can't do blah, 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 blah. And I flipped that thing almost to the ceiling, and it landed perfectly it was a 1 in a million shot in front of this huge crowd that everybody was watching.
What was the reaction?
Oh, the room exploded. Like, nobody could believe. I mean, people were holding the chip like this high above the thing and dropping it, and you couldn't get it to go in.
How much money did you make?
It was legend. I was drunk. I don't even know if I got the money. The whole place was pandemonium after that because it was just such an unlikely thing. But I've done that many times, not to that scale of my life, but like most of my life works like that.
That's amazing. Okay, so the moral of that story is don't offer Lee White 10,000 to make a half court shot because you're losing your 10,000. And with that, let's start the podcast.